Hi, I hope you're doing well. You're receiving this because we are connected here on LinkedIn. Whether we cross paths back in my field or home office days in corporate, or through our shared focus in the brain expansion group, you know I've had a lifelong passion for understanding the core principles behind human performance, especially under pressure. I'm glad to report neuroscience has caught up. Advanced neuroimaging has proven that what we've spent centuries calling the subconscious mind isn't a mysterious entity at all. It's literally a physical network of trillions of neural pathways running our cognitive processing. It functions exactly like the nervous system memory behind what we call muscle memory. And guess what? You can change it just as easily as resetting muscle memory. As you probably figured out, it's called neuroplasticity. In my opinion, it's the single greatest discovery related to personal development in my lifetime, and that's no exaggeration. Virtually everyone has that one thing, that desire or quest that's been elusive. This is not about incremental improvement. My favorite person to work with is the one who's given up on something important because they've tried everything, or at least they think they have. Once they experience neuroplasticity on a real situation in real time in their life, they instantly know this is different. Virtually all personal development literature focuses on the conscious mind side of the system, the intellectual aspects of what needs to be done, insights, more information. When a leader hits that Peter principle moment, or someone shuts down in a certain kind of pressure and gets stuck, or perhaps we're talking about the person who can't stay regulated in certain situations, that reaction can kill trust in an instant that took years to build. The common solution is to avoid these situations. That's where neuroplasticity shines. The reason traditional methods don't work is because it's like a hardwired biological circuit, a well-developed path of least resistance and a system that's processing at 11 million bits per second. But here's the thing, it's not hardwired. That's if you engage with it in the same 11 million bits per second system. In the next few minutes, I'll illustrate what is actually happening and why what I'm saying is not only possible, it's well within reach. No hype, no long meditations, no mystical mumbo jumbo, or talk about parts of the brain. I'll walk through a few illustrations here to show you what's happening. We're all familiar with this concept of the conscious mind. We're going along, but we also have the subconscious, and I'll also call that the network of neurons, and then the higher self. So those are the three entities that are familiar. The conscious mind processes at 50 bits per second. So slow, that's what I was talking about. It's far behind the speed of life that we're experiencing today. The subconscious, it being a network of neurons, neural pathways with energy flowing through those neural pathways, you can see why it can process at 11 million bits per second. The same way you can receive a text or email from someone halfway around the world in less than a second. And then we have the higher self. And these are important, which is why they're also the first three in my 7 performance areas: mental, physical, and spiritual. And the spiritual is not the spiritual realm, it's the higher self. It's our awareness of awareness that I'm talking about here with the spiritual. So mental, physical, and spiritual are the first 3 areas. Emotional is the 4th. And those are the ones that we have to master to keep from getting hijacked as we pursue relationships, professional and financial, the final 3. When we have a major shift in our lives, we change jobs, we start a business, we're expecting something like this, that nice inflection point. Too often, it just continues the same. We just continue going along the same as everyone else. This is elusive. This is very difficult using just the conscious mind because you need all 3 operating together. You need the alignment from the subconscious and you need the alignment from the higher self to make that happen. And let's just say this is some period of time, more than 2 years, less than 20, some period of time. And we're moving along and we have these stimulus reaction responses. Something happens, we see it, we make a choice, we move on. Something else happens, we make a choice, we see it, we move on. But every once in a while, something may happen and it's big enough, it gets our attention, and next thing you know, we're spiking up a little bit. We're getting a little bit of emotion involved. And before we can come back down, we start thinking about other things that are related to it and how there may be some other problems. And that creates a little bit more of a spike. And next thing you know, we start imagining how what's happening today is very similar to what happened sometime in the past that turned into a big problem. Now you're up here. If we can get ourselves back on track, we can find ourselves coming back down, and then we're back onto the, take a blip, reset, take a blip, reset. But what happens if this just keeps going? What happens if we don't get to reset and we keep coming up with new problems and new ways that this is going to turn into something much worse? If it stays too long, we end up in this higher level. It's no longer coherence down here. We're in this heightened state. And that heightened state, it's because of the cortisol, adrenaline, essentially fight or flight. But now it's more neurobiological. That fight or flight, it's like a chemical cocktail that's coursing through our system. And you don't have to look far to have experienced this. Maybe in traffic and you're driving and the police car lights up and sirens come on behind you. That could be enough to get this spike going. Or maybe you have a heated argument and you get intense. You know how long that could last. It could last several hours as this chemical process needs to work its way through the body. So that's a big difference between being able to come back down versus staying up here. And this is not the conscious mind. This is the automaticity that can be adjusted with neuroplasticity. Now here's what's interesting. I'm drawing this, right? But keep in mind, we have 33,000 on average stimulus reaction cycles per day. So this could represent just 8:15 to 8:20. I hope that puts it in perspective. And we have all seen it, right? You're scrolling through email in the morning and you see something that is going to be a problem. And this happens. Now, if you can come back down, great. If you stay up here, that's not so good. What we do with neuroplasticity is break this down so you understand, first of all, you won't experience this. And if you do experience it, it's going to be lower and you'll be able to come back down faster. We're going to take this out of play because this is a process that can be adjusted with neuroplasticity. There's one more thing I'll mention. So while we have 33,000 stimulus response cycles, that's roughly one every other second. But when this happens, we get about 90 seconds to get it back on track. It has to do with emotions. It's beyond the scope of right now, but it has to do with how we process emotions. And I'm not talking about what is talked about in emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is predominantly working on the conscious mind side. We're talking about the network of neurons, the subconscious, the 11 million bits per second, where there's no language here. So redrawing this, we take this segment, and it's really just a very, very small slice of our life. This is the 1 second model. We're going to break it down to pre-stimulus, early detection, rapid appraisal, reaction formation, and then conversion. S to something that the conscious mind can perceive as thought. This is the first half second of the 1 second model. And then from there we have conscious awareness and we have response formation. This is all happening in 1 second. I use the models to, one, illustrate what's going on and to notice where the weak links are, where the bottlenecks are. If you look at emotional intelligence work mostly sits over here. Because when emotional intelligence was created in the mid-90s, the brain scanning tools were not available for researchers to see that it's not a subconscious mind. It's not something that's fixed. Identity is not fixed. Personality, intelligence, those things are not fixed. It's a network of neurons, a network of literally trillions of associations. And those associations can be rewired using neuroplasticity. Of course, after this, we have the response. So this is where we focus. This is why I say that we can rewrite this narrative up here so that this doesn't happen. This all is designed to keep us alive, and it's essentially We've evolved from hunter-gatherer over the last 300,000 years. The majority of that, but 299,000 of those years, has essentially been without the machines, the technology, the various aids, and the information that we have today. So most of that 300,000, like virtually 99.99% of it, has been hunter-gatherer. So it makes sense that our evolution has evolved to support that. When you look at neuroscience, you'll see over and over and over these findings make so much sense when you look at it from a hunter-gatherer standpoint. Why is that important? It's important because neuroscience is in its infancy, at least the way we know it today. And if it's taken this long to evolve to where we are and the brain hasn't changed much over that period of time, I don't expect to see neuroplasticity and this ability to rewire the subconscious change much in the near future. What can change is our understanding of it and how we can apply it and how we can leverage it. And that's what can grow. There's one more model I'll quickly show just to say, so you can see how this plays out, because I talked about the 1 second model, and the 1 second model comes under the 7-step reset. The 7-step reset is the model we use to rewrite the conditioning. Again, we're having 33,000 stimulus reaction cycles a day. We don't have to change all 33,000 of those. You change just a few and you can change the trajectory of your life. So you notice I don't call it stimulus response. It's stimulus reaction and then response. And the response is step 4. This 1 second model, this is all step 3 in my 7-step reset. There's 1 and 2 are to make sure that we're in a good state of coherence, because the more we are in coherence, the less likely we're going to be triggered. Just at a high level, step 1 is knowledge and understanding. You have to understand how it works. And I always say to know and not do is to not know. So I get it. And I agree that you need more than knowledge, but you have to have the baseline understanding of what's going on, and that the subconscious is not a mind, it's really a network of neurons, and then how you engage. Otherwise, you're falling back to the solutions of the conscious mind side, things like mindset and priming, which are important. Beliefs, those are all important, but they can all be hijacked by the network of neurons, and which is why we have to understand how it works. And we talk about priming, neuroplasticity, mindset, physiology, as well as beliefs in this step 1. Then we have the coherence, and people may try to get to coherence, but it starts with present moment, and that present moment happens in that 1 second model. In the middle, in the transition from the reaction formation to the conscious awareness, that's that present moment when you can hold attention in that moment, so you're not letting the response simply equal the reaction. That's when you're on your way to present moment. And when you're in the present moment, you're more likely to have coherence. And that's important, because the more coherence you have, the less room you have for chaos and rigidity. When you have low coherence, you have a lot of room for chaos and rigidity. Chaos is like drama and heading towards crashing out. Rigidity is like a fixed mindset. Now, I was talking about the sides. I call it the conscious mind side and the network of neurons side. And this is basically the 1 second model. In the 1 second model, you have the first 600 milliseconds. It's 1/10 of a second for pre-listening. And then you have your 5/10 of a second. And then over here, you have another half second. Of course, it's a little bit less than a half second on the conscious mind side. But remember, we should be pausing. And people try to have that pause between reaction and response. But if you're already triggered and it's happening at the 11 million bits per second, you've lost the initiative. Using automaticity to have that pause sits there between reaction for response formation and your actual response. That's why the response is a step 4. That's why it's separate. What's interesting is if you look at it with muscle memory and coaches spend very little time intellectualizing, and they get on the field and they're practicing, they're drilling. When you look at human development, personal development, leadership development, etc., people spend most of the time intellectualizing over here on the conscious mind side and very little time in practice. Eavesdrop in on a sales meeting or a leadership meeting, you'll see some role play, but it's a lot more talking and discussing and insights. We should be doing more role play, because in the role play, that's when you're practicing with the network of neurons, just like you would be with muscle memory on the field. And it's not muscle memory, it's nervous system memory. And then the neurons respond the same way, whether it's cognitive processing or physiological. And I talk about not needing the parts of the brain. We get lost in the parts of the brain, and this is where neuroscience tends to take us. It's where emotional intelligence tends to take us, because it was thought that the subconscious was a mind and it wasn't understood. We have to get away from talking about the parts of the brain for lay people, because all the neurons behave and respond the same way. If I want to change my path of least resistance, which is basically a habit, in a physical activity, I approach the network of neurons the same way that I approach them when it's cognitive processing and a habit, whether it's a reaction habit or a behavioral habit or an identity. I can change those with neuroplasticity the same way I can change muscle memory in an athlete who wants to make a move. The other thing I mentioned, so the 3 different habit types: you have behavioral, you have reactive, and you have identity type constructs. Behavioral habits, most people feel like professionally, oh yeah, I can solve my habits. I've learned to not interrupt. I can stop scrolling social media. I run when I'm supposed to run. I go to the gym when I'm supposed to go to the gym. Those are behavioral habits, no problem. The reactive habits are harder. These are the triggers. And the solution for reactive habits tends to be avoidance, because it's hard to wrangle that in. We'll solve that with neuroplasticity 100%. And then you have the identity type habits, identity and personality. And this is why my favorite client to work with is a person who thinks they've tried everything, because when you're attempting to change identity and personality, these are constructs, and you're trying to change them at the construct level, this is a non-starter. That would be like a coach going in and trying to optimize a play, a complex play, at the play level. No, they first start with the individual movements and the skills of each part of that play, and working on the weak links. I agree we should be working on strengths, but you have to have the weak links up to a point where it's not going to hurt, right? So you have the coach is going to work with the individual players, get their skills up to where they need to be, get them moving, and then they build on those skills working together until it becomes a play. Trying to change a play at the construct level is difficult. It's even more difficult to change a personality at the construct level, because you have the reactions, you have all the associations, trillions and trillions of associations in the network of neurons. You have all the habits, the 0 to 7 conditioning, which is different than the next person's 0 to 7 conditioning. So all this data about how to change, it doesn't hold up. Essentially, the brain is an efficient machine, and neuroplasticity has a high metabolic demand. And so the brain is always being efficient. This is where homeostasis comes from. Homeostasis is stability at the status quo. By using these principles, we build allostasis. Allostasis is stability on an upward trajectory. The reason why hacks don't work, they work for a day or two, but the reason why they're not sustainable is because they get absorbed into the homeostasis. Remember, the brain and the central nervous system are biased towards having us live in that familiar zone. And so as you introduce a hack, yes, it works for a little bit, but it gets absorbed. You have 100 billion neurons, each connected with thousands of other neurons. There's just way too many associations. And what happens is people, if they fall right back to doing things the way it's always been done. That's how you get those flat lines. It's not really flat, it's slightly upward, but that's how you get those steady lines instead of that inflection point that we look for. That inflection point is very possible. I say you want to start with purpose because it does require inner work, but where the time is measured in weeks and months, not years. I do have an invitation for you. Whether you're interested in pursuing a lifelong interest that may have seemed out of reach, or simply considering the highly defensible anti-aging benefits to expand your own allostatic capacity, let's keep the conversation moving forward. You have 2 options, one passive, one active. You can follow my Dynamic Leadership Center company page, where I'll regularly post how-to content related to neuroplasticity, including live streams with interaction. Or you can click the link that's with this message and join the group Dynamics of Neuroplasticity. There we'll get involved with roundtable discussions, real world problem solving through the lens of neuroplasticity, as well as collaborations recorded and live with group members to keep advancing our understanding and ability to apply neuroplasticity. Regardless, I recommend following the Dynamic Leadership Center company page, and you can also take that next step and click the link that's with this message so you have the option of participating in the roundtable discussions, exploration of real world situations, as well as interacting with other members who are all interested in neuroplastic solutions. And I'll see you on the other side.